Rae Rylin squinted up at the towering glass building in Midtown Manhattan, her heartbeat doing double time as the revolving door whooshed open in front of her. "Just a summer job," she whispered to herself. 3 months, good money, new experience, no big deal. Except it kind of was a big deal. Rylin House Publishing wasn't just any company, it was one of the most prestigious publishing houses in the country. And she, a recent literature grad from a small liberal arts college in Ohio, had somehow landed a summer editorial assistant position after a fluke interview with a woman named Camilla who liked her raw enthusiasm. She stepped into the marble-floored lobby, gripping the strap of her canvas tote like it could anchor her to the ground. A woman in a sleek navy dress approached with a headset and a tablet. "Rae Rylin," she asked with a warm smile. Yes, that's me. I'm Dana, I'll take you up. Mr. Hawthorne's waiting." "Mr. Hawthorne," Rae echoed, her stomach tightening. Dana pressed the elevator button. "Rowan Hawthorne. CEO. He does the welcome orientation personally for new hires. Don't worry, he's not as intimidating as he looks." Great. The elevator ride was smooth and silent. Rae chewed the inside of her cheek. She hadn't Googled much about Rowan Hawthorne, just enough to know he was young for a CEO, had taken over the company from his father 5 years ago, and was notoriously private. No social media. No press interviews. Some called him ruthless. Others called him brilliant. The doors opened on the top floor, and there he was. He stood behind a sleek black desk with the Manhattan skyline behind him, talking into a phone with one hand in his pocket. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it 20 times that morning. When his eyes lifted and met hers, Rae nearly forgot how to breathe. He ended the call quickly, then walked toward her. "Rae Rylin," he said, his voice low and smooth. "Welcome." "Hi," she managed, sticking out her hand. Thank you." His shake was firm, his palm warm. "Come in. I like to meet everyone who joins the team." She followed him into his office, heart pounding. The space was modern and expensive-looking, but not cold. There were shelves of books behind his desk, some framed black and white photos, and a large abstract painting on the wall. "I read your portfolio," he said, sitting casually on the edge of his desk. "You've got a strong voice." Rae blinked. "You read it." "I don't delegate everything, especially when it comes to people who might be shaping the future of this company." That threw her. He studied her, and she felt the full weight of his attention. "Why publishing?" she hesitated. "Books saved me. My mom passed when I was 14. I didn't really talk for a while after that. Books were the only thing that made me feel like someone understood." Rowan's expression changed subtly. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "That makes sense." There was a pause. Something unspoken passed between them. Rae glanced away first, her cheeks heating. "Well," he finally said, standing, "you'll be working under Camilla 2 floors down, but we'll cross paths. I'm very involved." "I got that sense," Rae said, then immediately regretted sounding too casual, but Rowan just smiled. Before she left, he handed her a slim, dark blue notebook. "You'll need this. It's not official, but everyone who works here gets one." She flipped it open. Inside was a quote handwritten in neat, slanted script. "Write something worth reading or do something worth writing." "Benjamin Franklin," she murmured. "Exactly." Hours later, Rae sat at her new desk, still replaying the encounter. Everyone buzzed about Mr. Hawthorne like he was some untouchable figure, but he'd been kind, direct, and something else. She tried to push the thought away. Over the next few weeks, Rae threw herself into her work. She proofread galleys, organized author meetings, and even got to sit in on an acquisitions meeting. She saw Rowan only occasionally, always in passing, always sharply dressed, always with people trailing behind him. But one afternoon, she was typing notes from a manuscript when a deep voice said behind her, "You missed a comma on page 12. She jumped and turned. Rowan stood behind her, hands in his pockets, looking amused. "Oh my God," she muttered, clicking through the document. "You're right. I always am," he said deadpan, then added, "Kidding, mostly." She laughed, relaxing a little. "You read this whole thing?" "I skim fast. It's how I survived business school." She raised an eyebrow. "You went to business school, Harvard." He said it like it was nothing. Of course he did. That small moment turned into more. Over coffee breaks and elevator rides, he started appearing more often, asking her opinion on cover designs on pitches. listening, really listening. And then one evening, as she was leaving late, she saw him in his office alone, rubbing his temple. She knocked lightly. He looked up. "Rae, you okay?" He hesitated. "Long day." She stepped in, unsure why she felt so drawn to him. "Want to talk about it?" He stared at her for a moment, like he wasn't sure if she was real. Then he said, "My father passed 2 summers ago. This was his company. I still feel like I'm proving I deserve it." That vulnerable moment cracked something open. After that, things shifted. He started waiting for her outside meetings, brought her coffee just how she liked it. One day, when she mentioned she'd never been to a Broadway show, 2 tickets showed up on her desk with a handwritten note. "Tonight, don't say no." She didn't. That night, she wore a simple black dress. He wore a charcoal suit that made her stomach flip. As they stepped out of the car, he said softly, "You look beautiful." After the show, they walked through Times Square, laughing about the play. Then his hand brushed hers. She looked up. He stopped walking. "Rae," he said, voice low with something rough in it, "I know I'm your boss. I know this is fast. But I haven't stopped thinking about you since you walked into my office." Her breath caught. "Rowan." "I don't do this," he said, "but with you I want to." She didn't think. She just stepped forward and kissed him. It wasn't soft. It was electric, and when they finally pulled apart, he whispered, "This summer just got a lot more complicated." By mid-July, Rae found herself stepping into worlds that had once belonged only to her imagination. She wasn't just an editorial assistant anymore, at least, not to Rowan. That kiss had changed everything. Quiet glances in passing turned into full conversations behind closed doors. What started as stolen moments after hours became late-night dinners in hushed corner booths, chauffeured rides through the city, and whispered stories over glasses of wine. But inside the walls of Rylin House, they kept their distance. Professionally, nothing had changed. Publicly, everything was the same. And that tension of wanting to reach for him, but knowing she couldn't, burned hotter than anything Rae had ever felt before. One Thursday evening, she was called to the executive floor for a last-minute meeting about a manuscript from a high-profile author. When she entered the glass conference room, she didn't expect Rowan to be the only one waiting. He didn't greet her immediately. He was staring out the window at the fading skyline, hands behind his back, jaw tight. "You're early," Rae said, setting her notepad down. He turned slowly. "They're not coming. I canceled the meeting." "Why?" "I needed an excuse to see you." She closed the door behind her. "Rowan, we said we'd keep this out of the office." "I know what we said." He walked toward her, slower than usual, like he was struggling with something. "Last night when I dropped you off, I almost followed you inside." "You should have." His eyes darkened. "If I had, I wouldn't have left." For a few heartbeats, silence stretched between them. Then Rae asked, "What are we doing?" He didn't hesitate. "Falling." A knock broke the moment. Camilla's voice followed. "Rowan, we need you downstairs." He cleared his throat. 1 minute. When the door clicked shut, he stepped close to Rae, lowered his voice. "I'm taking you somewhere tomorrow. Don't make plans after work." "Where?" "You'll see." The next evening, Rae didn't know what to expect when a sleek black car pulled up outside the building. The driver opened the door without a word, and she slid in to find Rowan already inside, dressed in a crisp midnight suit that made him look even more devastating than usual. "You look nervous," he said, studying her. "I don't usually get into cars without knowing the destination." "You trust me," she considered. "Yes, good." The ride was quiet, filled with soft jazz and the flicker of city lights through tinted windows. When they pulled up in front of a tall iron gate, Rae blinked. "This is a residence." "It's mine," Rowan said. The gate opened, revealing a long cobblestone driveway lined with lanterns. At the end stood a brownstone unlike any she'd seen, historic, elegant, with ivy crawling up the side and warm light spilling from the windows. "You live here?" she asked as they stepped out. "Sometimes. I like the quiet here." Inside, the space was curated but not cold. Bookshelves lined the walls, old records stacked beneath a vintage turntable. A fire flickered in the hearth even though it was July. Rae wandered into the living room, running her fingers over a framed first edition of The Great Gatsby. "Your collection's incredible," she murmured. "I bought most of them with my father. He taught me how to read the spine of a book like it was a person." She turned to find him watching her. "You don't talk about him much." He poured 2 glasses of wine, handed her one. He was complicated, brilliant, but hard. I spent most of my life trying to prove I wasn't just his shadow. Have you? Rowan took a long sip before answering. I'm not sure. But when I'm with you, I don't feel like I'm chasing him anymore. That confession landed deep. They ate dinner on the terrace, grilled sea bass, roasted vegetables, and a delicate lemon tart he insisted he didn't bake himself. Rae was laughing at one of his stories about a disastrous author dinner when he leaned over the table and brushed her hair behind her ear. You make everything quieter, he said. That night, he didn't drop her off. They stayed, and it wasn't frantic or impulsive. It was slow, deliberate, like every moment had been building toward this one. When she woke hours later, wrapped in his arms, she felt something she hadn't in years safe. But the next morning, reality snapped back fast. Rae walked into the office and immediately felt the shift. Eyes followed her. Whispers bloomed behind turned backs. Camilla called her into a conference room 15 minutes after she arrived. Close the door, she said, not unkindly. Rae did. You've done good work, Camilla began, but you need to understand that things move fast here. Perception matters. I don't know what you mean. You're smart. You do. Rae's stomach dropped. Has someone said something? Nothing official, but Rowan isn't just your boss. He's the face of this company if people think he's distracted, it becomes everyone's problem. I haven't let it affect my work. I know, but others won't care. After the meeting, Rae sat at her desk, staring at her screen but seeing nothing. That night, she didn't hear from Rowan, not a call, not a note, nothing. The silence lasted 2 days. Then on Sunday evening, she opened her apartment door to find him standing there. No driver, no suit, just jeans and a dark jacket, rain clinging to his shoulders. I needed space, he said simply. To think. She stepped aside. Did you come to a conclusion? I did. He looked around her small apartment like the walls might collapse under the weight of what he was about to say. I'm falling for you, Rae, not because it's convenient, not because it makes sense, but because I can't stop. She crossed her arms. Then why disappear? Because I've never let someone matter like this, and I didn't want to screw it up. You already did, she said, her voice quieter than she meant. He stepped closer. Let me fix it. She didn't move. What does that look like to you? Dinner, tomorrow night. No secrets, no hiding. I'll pick you up at 7. And after that, Rowan took her hand gently. After that, everything changes. The moment Rae stepped into the black town car the next evening, she knew something had shifted. Rowan didn't greet her with a kiss or a compliment. Instead, his eyes searched hers like he was trying to read a page he hadn't written himself. You okay? She asked, settling into the soft leather seat beside him. He looked out at the traffic for a long second. I will be, but I need to be honest with you tonight. About everything. She didn't speak. She just nodded. They drove uptown, past places Rae had only known through books and magazine spreads. When they finally pulled up to a discreet brick building nestled near the park, a valet appeared before Rae could even open her door. Inside, an elevator whisked them up to a private dining room overlooking the city. No menus, no waitstaff hovering, just a long table set for 2 and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the skyline like a painting. I had this place cleared for us, Rowan said, removing his jacket and hanging it on the back of his chair. Rae sat slowly, absorbing the view. You didn't have to do all this. I did, he said quietly, because what I'm about to say. It doesn't come with flowers and soft lighting, but I needed you to know it's coming from the right place. She waited. I wasn't supposed to be running Rylin House, not this soon. My father had a stroke 3 years ago. He passed 14 months later. I was his only heir, but I was still finishing my 2nd year at Harvard. The board didn't think I was ready. They almost sold the company. Rae's fingers curled around the stem of her water glass. But they didn't. No, because I offered to buy out their shares. I liquidated every trust, every stock option he left me. I put everything I had into saving it. She blinked. You bought your own company. Yes, and when the dust settled, I owned 64%. That's when people started calling me a billionaire. But that label never meant anything to me. Not compared to what I gave up to protect the legacy. Rae leaned back in her chair, processing. Why are you telling me this now? Because I need you to understand something. I've spent every day since that moment trying to prove I earned this, not just to the board, to myself. And then you walked in with your canvas bag and your messy notes and your ridiculous passion for stories, and I stopped thinking about quarterly projections for the first time in years. She stared at him, her voice low. You make it sound like I ruined your focus. No, he said, shaking his head. You reminded me why it mattered in the first place. Their food arrived sea scallops over saffron risotto and roasted duck with plum glaze, but neither of them touched it. I've never let anyone into this part of my life, he continued. Not one person. But I'm asking you to walk into it with me anyway. Ray's pulse thudded. What does that look like? Rowan reached across the table, his hand steady. It looks like more of this, more truth. No more backroom meetings or pretending we're just exchanging manuscript notes. I want to be with you. Fully, publicly, she hesitated. You're not worried about the fallout. I am. But I'm more worried about waking up one day and realizing I let fear dictate the parts of my life that could have made me happy. Rae looked down at their joined hands. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll walk into it with you. Rowan exhaled, and for the first time since she'd met him, Rae saw something in his face that looked like peace. After dinner, they didn't return to the car. He took her hand and led her into the park, the city lights glowing behind the trees. They walked past statues and lamp posts as night deepened, his fingers laced tightly with hers. I should have told you about everything sooner, he said as they paused near a quiet fountain. But I didn't know how to explain it. I've always been measured, calculated. You make me reckless, she smiled, brushing her thumb along his knuckles. That's not a bad thing. I know, but it's new. They stood in silence for a long moment, the world narrowing to the space between them. Then he said, I want to show you something. They took a car to his downtown building, but this time they didn't stop at his office. He led her to the rooftop, where a string of soft lights glowed along the terrace edges and a single record player sat in the corner, already spinning a quiet jazz tune. The city stretched endlessly around them, windows glowing like stars. You set this up? Rae asked. He nodded. Last week. I didn't know if I'd get the courage to bring you here. She stepped into him, her voice barely audible. Dance with me. He pulled her close and they moved slowly, the music washing over them. There was no rush, no performance, just the rhythm of two hearts timing themselves to each other. I've been thinking, he murmured against her temple, about what comes next. Next, I want to take you to the London Book Fair in August. It's 3 days. You'd meet the authors, the agents. You're ready, Rae. Her breath caught. Me, represent the house. You already do. You just don't see it yet. She pulled back slightly to look at him. You really believe that, he nodded. You have the instincts. You see the story inside the story. You don't need permission. You need opportunity. And you'd give me that? No, he said, brushing hair from her face. You earned it. I'm just smart enough to notice. They didn't talk more that night. They didn't need to. The silence between them had become something soft and sacred. When he finally drove her home, he didn't ask to come up. Instead, he kissed her slowly like a promise. And she knew this wasn't just summer anymore. It was something far more permanent. The glass doors of the London Book Fair opened with a rush of warm air and murmuring voices. Rae stepped inside beside Rowan, her heart pounding with a strange mix of anticipation and awe. The space was massive publishers' booths stretching in every direction, banners of upcoming releases floating above the crowd, the air rich with the scent of printed pages and ambition. Rowan didn't wear a name badge. He didn't need one. People recognized him immediately, some nodding politely, others stopping to greet him with firm handshakes and guarded smiles. He introduced Rae as part of the acquisitions team, and each time he said it, something inside her straightened. No hesitation, no qualifiers, she belonged. They moved through the crowd together, but Rowan never hovered. He let her lead conversations with agents, pitch ideas, and take notes during panel discussions. He stepped in only when needed, his presence quiet but commanding. Later that afternoon, as they stood near the Harper and Quinn booth, Rae leaned over and whispered, "You're letting me take the wheel." "You don't need me to steer," he replied, eyes scanning the crowd for their next meeting. "You just needed the keys." By the end of the day, Rae's heels ached and her voice was hoarse, but she couldn't stop smiling. As the crowd thinned and the last panels wrapped up, Rowan guided her toward a discreet side exit that led to a waiting car. Inside, she leaned her head back against the seat and looked at him. You didn't have to bring me here. You could have taken any senior editor. I didn't want someone predictable, he said. I wanted someone who sees stories the way I do. Someone who still feels something. She turned to him, her voice soft. What do you feel right now? He didn't answer right away. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, square envelope. I was going to wait until we got back to New York, he said. But you've already surprised me a dozen times today. It feels right now. Rae took the envelope slowly, brows pulling together. Inside was a single page, an offer letter, her name at the top. A new title, associate editor, full-time, effective immediately. Her breath caught. Rowan. I know you weren't planning to stay in New York, but I don't want this to end in August. Not your career, not us. She stared down at the letter, overwhelmed. You don't have to decide right now, he said. But if you say yes, I want you to know something else. He reached for her hand, his tone quieter. I don't fall in love easily. It's not how I'm built. But I'm in love with you, Rae, and whether you stay at Rylin House or not, that doesn't change. I'll find a way to deserve you either way. Tears pricked her eyes, unexpected, sharp. She didn't blink them away. She turned in her seat and kissed him, not out of passion this time, but out of everything else. Trust, gratitude, love. When they got back to the hotel, she didn't sleep. She sat by the window as the city lights blinked below, the offer letter beside her, and thought about how far she'd come from that girl with the canvas tote and the nervous smile. In the morning, she placed the envelope on Rowan's pillow with one word written across it in ink. Yes. 3 months later, the rooftop of Rylin House was transformed, fairy lights strung between trellises, a jazz quartet played softly near the back, and a long table of champagne glasses shimmered in the golden hour light. It wasn't a gala or a launch. It was a celebration of Rylin House's rebirth, of new voices, of a summer that had rewritten everything. Camilla raised her glass first. To Rae Rylin, whose instincts are sharper than any resume and whose heart brought something back to this company we didn't know we'd lost. Laughter and cheers followed. Rae stood near the edge of the rooftop, her glass untouched, watching the sky change color above the skyline. She felt a hand slide gently around her waist. You're quiet, Rowan said, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. I'm thinking, she replied, leaning into him, about how I said yes to a job and found everything I didn't know I needed. He turned her gently to face him. Come with me. He led her to the far corner of the rooftop, where a table waited with a small velvet box resting on it. Rae's heart stalled. I've built companies, bought buildings, fought for an empire I didn't ask to inherit, Rowan said, his voice low. But none of it matters if I don't build something with you. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, stunning. I'm not asking for forever today. I'm asking if you'll start building toward it with me. Rae didn't hesitate. Yes. 100 times, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and the rooftop exploded into applause as the jazz band picked up tempo. They turned to face the crowd, and Rae felt the moment settle around them like something sacred. Later, when the guests had gone and the lights had dimmed, Rowan pulled her close and whispered, You changed everything. She rested her head against his chest. You let me. And as the city pulsed quietly below them, they stood together at the edge of a new chapter, one built not on power or legacy, but on the kind of love that rewrote every rule. The summer had ended, but their story was just beginning. A month after the rooftop celebration, autumn settled over New York in a rush of amber leaves and brisk winds. Rae stood barefoot in the living room of Rowan's brownstone. Stacks of manuscript pages spread across the floor like a chaotic mosaic of voices and ideas. She'd left her shoes by the door hours ago, too focused on the submissions she was reviewing for her first solo editorial imprint to notice the time. Rowan stepped into the room, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. You haven't moved in 3 hours. Rae glanced up. I'm narrowing down the lineup for the winter list. There's one piece that's close, but the ending doesn't land. It's right there, and then it just doesn't say what it wants to. He picked up a page from the pile and read a few lines in silence. It's clean. But it's safe. That's it, Rae said, sitting back on her hands. It's careful, and I don't want careful. I want something that makes people feel like the ground's shifting under them. He crouched beside her. You're not afraid to take risks. I'm terrified of taking the wrong ones. He looked at her with that steady gaze he always reserved for moments that mattered. Then maybe it's worth remembering that the biggest risk you've taken so far was me. She laughed softly. You're not a risk. You're a statistical anomaly. Rowan leaned in and kissed her forehead. I'll take it. She let herself fall back onto the rug with a sigh. Do you ever feel like success comes with a clock ticking behind it? Like you've got to keep proving yourself or it all slips away. He lay beside her, their shoulders touching. Every day, but I've learned it's not about outrunning the clock. It's about deciding what's worth the time you spend. Their fingers found each other's in the space between them. For a long moment, the only sound was the rustle of old pages shifting slightly in the breeze from the open window. I have a surprise for you, he said suddenly. She lifted her head. Surprise as in good or surprise as in I'll need to sit down? Both. He stood and reached for her hand. Come on. They drove uptown, the city glowing like a constellation around them. Rae tried not to guess where they were going, focusing instead on the warmth of his hand wrapped around hers. When they pulled up outside a narrow building with a vintage red awning, her breath caught. This is the old Langston bookstore, she said. It closed last year. Rowan stepped out and held the door for her. Not anymore. Inside, the space had been transformed. The shelves were restored, the wood polished to a shine. A fireplace crackled softly in the corner. The air smelled of cedar and ink. I bought the building, he said. Renovated it. The top 2 floors are yours for offices, workshops, whatever you want. Down here, it's staying a bookstore. We'll host author readings, panels, student events. A place for stories to live, not just be sold. She turned in a slow circle, trying to take it all in. You did this for me, for us, for what we're building, and because this city needs more spaces that feel like magic. Rae walked to the front counter and ran her fingers over the carved wood. Her throat tightened. I used to come here in high school. I'd sit in that corner and read until closing. I never thought I'd get to be part of something like this. You're not part of it, he said. You are it. That night, as they stood beneath the soft light of the chandelier Rowan had personally picked out for the reading nook, Rae turned to him. I don't know how I got here, she said. From that girl walking into Rylin House with 0 New York experience and a tote bag full of rejection letters. You got here by being exactly who you are. And never letting anyone tell you that wasn't enough. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, worn notebook, the same one he'd given her on her first day. I found this in your office, he said. You filled it. She flipped through the pages. They were packed with notes, edits, quotes, ideas scribbled in the margins. I kept waiting for the perfect thing to write on the last page, she admitted. Rowan took a pen from his jacket and handed it to her. Right this moment. So she did. 3 months later, the bookstore opened to a line that stretched down the block. Rae stood at the front, greeting guests, shaking hands with debut authors, introducing local high school students to the poetry section. The energy was electric, the shelves brimming with carefully chosen titles from voices across the world. Rowan watched her from the second-floor balcony, arms folded, a quiet pride in his eyes. When the last guest left and the lights dimmed, Rae found him shelving a copy of a novel they'd acquired together. She wrapped her arms around him from behind. You built me a home, she said. No, he whispered. We built one together. They didn't rush to leave. They sat behind the counter with mugs of hot cider, talking about the spring list, the next author retreat, a mentorship program Rae was dreaming up. I want to start a literary scholarship, she said, for students who don't have access to programs. Especially kids who have lost someone, Rowan nodded. We'll fund it through the foundation, name it after your mother. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't look away. You always know how to make things feel right. He took her hand, kissed her knuckles. That's because you're the only thing that's ever felt like home. As snow began to fall outside the wide glass windows, they turned off the lights, locking the door behind them. The streets were quiet, the city softened by the hush of winter. They walked hand in hand toward the future, not rushed, not uncertain, just ready. And in that quiet moment, beneath the falling snow and the glow of the street lamps, Rae knew there was no going back to who she'd been before that summer. She had found what she didn't know she was searching for. A partner, a purpose, a love worth building a life around.